The arena was packed to the rafters with energy pulsing like electricity through every seat and every soul in the building, as Bron Breakker stood tall in the ring, sweat gleaming off his chiseled frame, chest heaving after yet another dominating victory. The crowd half on their feet, half stunned into silence by the sheer brutality he had unleashed upon his opponent. And just as the commentators were beginning to recap the carnage with breathless awe and reverence, the lights in the building dimmed slightly, not completely going out but flickering, sending a ripple of confusion through the crowd. And then the Titantron sprang to life with a glitchy, static-filled feed that made no sense at first, until the outline of a man began to emerge, slow and deliberate, and though no name appeared, the crowd started buzzing with speculation because there had been whispers for weeks, cryptic promos, messages carved into the production trucks backstage, and now that same eerie symbol, two overlapping crescents slashed through the center, flashed, briefly before the video feed cut out and the lights slammed back on, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered figure in black standing just behind Bron, who hadn't noticed yet, still caught in the aftermath of his win, still basking in the adrenaline, coursing through his veins, until the crowd suddenly roared with a warning that didn't make it to his ears in time, because by the time he turned around, Jacob was already airborne, springing forward with a vicious flying knee that connected with Bron's jaw like a freight train, sending him reeling backwards into the turnbuckle, stunned, confused, trying to gather his senses. But Jacob wasn't about to let up. Not after months of preparation, not after building his body into a weapon forged for destruction. Not after dreaming night after night of this very moment where he would make the world understand that Bron Breakker wasn't untouchable, that there were monsters lurking even in the shadows of giants. And as Bron stumbled forward, arms limp at his sides, Jacob charged again, lifting him clean off the mat with a gut-wrench suplex that rattled the ring, and left the crowd in a mixture of awe and horror, because Jacob wasn't done, not even close. Grabbing Bron by the hair and dragging him to his feet, only to whip him with terrifying velocity into the steel steps outside the ring, the sickening sound of flesh against metal echoing through the arena like a gunshot. And the referees were already rushing down the ramp. But Jacob roared at them with a voice so guttural and primal that they actually stopped in their tracks, unsure of what they were even dealing with. Because this wasn't just another angry challenger, this was something else entirely. A predator who had studied his prey so intimately that every weakness was a page in his mental playbook, and now he circled Bron like a vulture as the former champion tried to pull himself up using the barricade, blood leaking from a gash on his forehead where his skull had met steel. But Jacob was merciless, lifting Bron by the waist and powerbombing him spine first onto the edge of the ring apron, the hardest part of the ring, and the thud that followed was sickening, drawing gasps from even the most hardened fans in the front row. And Jacob looked into the camera then, his face twisted in a snarl of fury and purpose, mouthing the words, "You're not invincible," before rolling Bron's broken body back into the ring and following like a panther closing in on a kill, stalking with slow, deliberate steps as he climbed the turnbuckle, standing tall above the fallen powerhouse, before launching himself into a brutal elbow drop that seemed to compress Bron's chest under the full weight of Jacob's frame. And now the officials were in the ring trying to intervene, placing themselves between the attacker and his victim. But Jacob shoved one aside, growling something unintelligible, and before the others could respond, he had hoisted Bron again, this time into a modified torture rack, bending his spine at unnatural angles, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Remember my name!" As Bron cried out in pain for the first time in his career, a sound so foreign and raw that it made the fans realize they were witnessing the fall of a titan in real time, and Jacob finally dropped him, letting Bron collapse into a heap in the center of the ring before kneeling beside him and whispering something directly into his ear. Something the cameras couldn't pick up, but that made Bron's eyes flicker with a mixture of anger and fear. And then Jacob stood, raising his arms, as the crowd exploded with both cheers and boos, the lines drawn instantly between those who respected the sheer dominance they'd just witnessed and those who saw nothing but a cowardly ambush. And as security finally arrived in force, Jacob backed away slowly, calmly, never breaking eye. Contact with Bron, who lay motionless, barely twitching, his legacy suddenly in question. His reign of dominance shattered not by a match, not by a technical loss, but by a man who had chosen to make a statement with violence. And as Jacob exited the ring and walked up the ramp, the camera zoomed in on the smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, the satisfaction of a predator who had waited in the dark, grown in the shadows, trained in silence for the chance to tear down a king with his bare hands. And the commentary team was losing their minds, trying to piece together who Jacob really was, where he came from, and why now? Why Bron? But none of that mattered to Jacob, who disappeared into the curtain with the knowledge that he had changed the course of the company in a single, brutal moment, and backstage chaos erupted as producers yelled into headsets, paramedics ran to the ring with a stretcher, and Bron Breakker, for all his accolades, was left staring at the lights above, his body broken, his mind racing, trying to comprehend how someone had dismantled him so completely, so methodically, and with such obvious hate. And Jacob, wherever he had gone, was already planning his next move, because this wasn't just a message, it was a war declaration. The start of something darker and deeper than anyone could have anticipated, and in the days to follow the footage would go viral, analyzed frame by fans and analysts alike, with forums speculating on Jacob's identity, his motivations, his background, some pointing to his collegiate wrestling career cut short by injury, others referencing his stint in underground fight circuits where he had earned the nickname the Silent Storm for his methodical, expressionless violence. And while Bron was sidelined for recovery, forced to watch from home as the company replayed his downfall on every weekly recap, Jacob would continue his path of destruction, laying waste to other competitors each time. Delivering the same cold, calculating offense, each attack bookended by the same eerie message. Nobody is safe when you pretend to be untouchable. And though the company refused to sanction a match between Bron and Jacob until the former was medically cleared, the narrative was inevitable. The return was building, and the day Bron finally stepped back into the ring, scarred but burning, with vengeance. Jacob was already there, standing in the center like a statue carved from war itself, waiting for round 2. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. This was personal now. And the wrestling world would never forget the night that Jacob struck like a thunderclap out of nowhere, shattered the myth of Bron Breakker, and lit the fuse on a rivalry destined to be written in blood, sweat, and legacy.